It is simply the most contagious thing that we would ever see, that we know of. Some of the listeners may have heard of a calculation called R naught, and it is important to understand what that means and what it doesn't mean. It refers to the contagiousness of a particular infectious disease in a completely susceptible population, which is not what we're dealing with. Different agents, infectious agents, it's a useful measure to understand how contagious measles is. And so if you consider more familiar things that we know about influenza, COVID-19, which have R naught values, 1.5 to 3, depending upon what strain you're dealing with, some a little bit more. Chickenpox has an R naught value of about 10 to 12, and then measles is about 12 to 18. So what that refers to is in a completely susceptible population, one ill individual with measles would be expected to cause 12 to 18 additional cases.
And not there's some viral factors why that happens too, but that long incubation period, so the patient is completely, from what you can tell, normal up to 3 weeks, and they may be spewing the virus out their nose, and there's no symptoms.
So,
So if
yeah,
you're vulnerable population exposed to measles, 90% will get infected. And if that wasn't bad enough, if you walk into a room after 2 hours after somebody has been in the room with measles, you may still be infected. It's an incredibly dangerous disease as far as its ability to infect vulnerable populations.
and her is actually a bit of a, one of the, what that's demonstrated very well in the population of people that are now suffering with this out in West Texas. They may live out in rural areas of West Texas, but they tend to drive long distances for shopping and visiting family. And there was one individual who later developed measles who had been to San Antonio and San Angelo, and had been in high density population areas uh, well before this person developing measles. We don't yet know if there are going to be additional cases arising from that history because of the long incubation period. And so we'll just have to see. It also brings to bear the significant operational challenges in managing this in an area where you're having a potential measles outbreak from an office point of view, from a hospital point of view, and how you handle these situations so you don't end up creating additional illness.
Right. And before vaccination, how many children get measles every year and how many die in the United States?
So it before we had routine measles vaccination, it was a very common childhood illness. 500,000 people having measles every year. There are approximately 400 people that died from measles every year in the United States. We had routine vaccination coming to the population in the 1960s. There was initially a killed virus vaccine, which was less effective. And since 1967, we've had a live virus, which is highly effective.
Yeah, and that was the work of Dr. Hillerman at Merck, who Paul Offit describes beautifully in his book Vaccinated, and all the work he did. People don't understand how much work it goes into creating a safe and effective vaccine. This guy at one point had Merck growing chickens so that the eggs were absolutely pristine. There was absolutely no risk to the children. And Merck became the largest breeder of chickens and eggs in the world just to produce a vaccine. These scientists and these pharmaceutical houses leave no stone unturned to try to make sure that these vaccines are safe and effective. And they will go, really, they will go to no end to make the vaccine as safe as possible. Of course, every vaccine has side effects. Anything you do in life, unfortunately, there's people that go to the bathroom, they have a heart attack and they die. It's just other people are in the best of shapes. They go into the gym and they start lifting weights and they have a massive heart attack and they die. So you can never eliminate risk. But this is an incredibly well known, studied, and safe vaccine that no one should have any concerns about getting or having their child receive. It's really truly a miracle of the age that we live in.
And I think the people who worked on these vaccines are heroes. I think the amount of good that has been done in protecting people from serious illness and death is incalculable, and we really do owe them our appreciation for the work that was done so many years ago, and which we're continuing to experience the benefits of today. And unfortunately, we do know that vaccines are uh, potentially a victim of their own success.
Yeah. I think parents sometimes are hesitant about vaccines because children ultimately will get better despite what we give them most of the time, right?
That's
So you're
not
going to take
that's
most,
not
I said most
that's
of
not
the
true with the
time.
disease. Children die from this disease, and the
They
world needs
do.
to know that you cannot take a risk. That
Yes,
is
you're
not
correct.
true.
You're correct. But in general, children sometimes get better before we just because they're very young and they have very strong immune systems, then they get all the diseases. And because of that, parents become hesitant, says, why should I give my kid the vaccine?